As the Egyptian army struggles to clear Tahrir Square of protesters, opposition groups are still trying to find a united voice. Cracks are already showing in the youth movement who say they are the rightful owners of the revolution. So, can Egypt's young people come together, or will they be swept aside in the march towards change? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Darren Jordan. After almost 3 weeks of dramatic protest, Hosni Mubarak finally stepped down as president of Egypt. And it was the country's young people who claimed the ousting of Egypt's strongman was inspired by their leadership. So how will their voices be heard as the country embarks on historic change? Well, keen to preserve their achievements, the coalition of the youth of the revolution, which includes members of the April 6 youth movement, the Muslim Brotherhood youth and young supporters of MOHAMED ELBARADEI, planned to form their own opposition party. During the protests, they were successful in mobilizing the Egyptian people with the help of social media. But as the roadmap for the future is planned, will their voice be heard in the clamour for real change? Well, let's take a quick look at some of the potential players in Egypt's future. First, there is MOHAMED ELBARADEI and his National Coalition for Change. Baradei returned to Egypt last year to lead a movement in reforming the constitution. The Muslim Brotherhood is Egypt's largest opposition group. Outlawed since the 50s, they were forced to run as independents in the 2005 elections. They won 20% of the seats. The GHAD party, led by Ayman Noor, was founded in 2004. Noor was Mubarak's main opposition in the 2005 elections. His party won only 8% of the vote. And KEFAYA is an opposition movement that gained prominence in 2004 and 2005 as it pressured Mubarak to step down. Internal disagreements have shaken the group, but they were in full support of the January 25th protests. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by our guests. They're all in the Egyptian capital, Cairo. Mohamed Waked, a member of the political opposition group KEFAYA, which stands for Enough. From Tahrir Square, Gigi Ibrahim, a political activist, and Alaa Abdel Fattah, an activist and blogger. Welcome all to the programme. Mohamed Waked, let me start with you, if I may. What's your assessment of Egypt's youth movement, and where does it sit in terms of the wider opposition?
It's definitely playing central roles in the wider opposition. The youth were central in taking over Tahrir Square and in supporting most of the demonstrations and the protests. But I would warn from calling this revolution a youth revolution. It's definitely a popular revolution that includes all segments of society. The youth were the spearhead, let's say, but it's not just a youth revolution. There is a lot to expect from the youth in the future, and there was a lot played by them, but also there is a tendency to exclude other segments of society by calling it youth revolution, and in a way undermining the spread of the revolution in the country.
Alaa Abdel Fattah, okay, so we know the Egyptian youth movement plans to set up its own opposition party to preserve their achievements. That's what they're calling it. How much of a political voice will they have in this new future through the transition and beyond?
I think everybody agrees that they're going to have a very big role. If you walk in Tahrir back when the sit-in was, in full rage, the opposition groups were, supportive and participating, but they were also scared. They were very calculating, scared of making one move that would make the youth turn against them. This is, of course, a revolution of all the Egyptian people, but this new actor, the young people who decided to start this, everybody is wondering what do they want and so on. But I don't think at this stage, I think this is going to be a process that will take time. They will join in existing political parties. They may join in new political parties that will be formed. We will see youth-led initiatives. I think we're going to see a transformation of political life, and that's going to take a couple of years or so.
Well, let's ask Gigi Ibrahim there in Cairo with you. I mean, Gigi, how effective is the youth movement, and can they use the achievements of the revolution to perhaps gain political mileage?
The youth movements, I mean, all of them, the political that organized and called out for the January 25th have definitely played a major role, but that was before this whole revolution started. Now, the people that have taken part of this revolution come from all factors of society. They're political, they're non-political, they're independent, they belong, the majority actually don't belong to any specific group, and they're calling it the youth revolution, but after all, what unites this revolution and this movement are demands. And as long as the demands are not completely met, people are going to continue to mobilize, and workers are playing now a major role. And until then, really, the youth, together with everybody that took part in this revolution, will continue to ask for those demands.
Mohamed Waked, just talk to us, if you can, about your organization, KEFAYA, your movement for change. I mean, what are you calling for, and how do your demands fit into the wider picture?
Can I get back just to a point about the political party that's being formed now? The youth have, there is a coalition of youth that has been created. I don't know if you followed it. The coalition of youth is mostly, this is like the most accepted representation of what happened in Tahrir Square. But if you look into the composition of the coalition, which later on should be developed into something more of a political platform that would represent the youth, I mean, you would easily discover that it's mostly composed of political organizations that have existed for quite a long time. The youth per se that were in Tahrir Square, the majority youth, we have not seen yet any attempt to organize them or create even quasi-institutional forms that would represent them. So we have now a united front that's basically an extension of already existing political organizations. This united front might open the door for later on a bigger representation of the youth, but it also might end up being one of the ways by which the political organizations that made it up have more leverage on the demands for the future. So as far as I can see now in Tahrir Square, the youth that everybody is talking about has not been absorbed in any form, in any organizational form that is the creation of the January 25th of January revolution. As far as KEFAYA is concerned, KEFAYA is very concerned about the situation now and basically hijacking the revolution and turning and sort of hijacking its demands and circumventing the demands of the revolution, especially where it comes to the abolition of all the despotic institutions that were created by the old regime, and specifically, to be very clear, the police, the secret police, the secret police, and the military intervention in not military, security intervention in all the wakes of political life in Egypt.
Well, let's put that question now to Gigi Ibrahim in Cairo. Gigi, isn't the problem here that with so many different voices and so many different groups in the revolution, that no one person or no one group can call itself the voice of the movement?
Yes, this is the whole point of this revolution. It's a people's revolution. There is no way that everybody will be united under one leader or a group or another, but we're all united under certain demands, and until these demands are met, I mean, we will stay united under those demands, which is, you know, the dissolvement of parliament, which has already happened. There is still, the government is still in place. The Mubarak corrupted government is still in place. This must be, it must come down and it must collapse, and there has to be a transitional government that is formed from all like an open platform to all representative of oppositional groups, or even reaching out to those who don't belong to any group to also have a voice in forming this transitional government. And also the emergency law is still in effect. So we are gaining a little by little our demands, but still the major demands are not met yet, and we will still be united under those demands, and workers are calling out for corrupted figures within their workplace or within their ministries to step down or to give them a vote of no confidence. And until then, the revolution will still maintain its momentum in that sense until we have the free and fair election.
Okay, let's bring in Ala Abdel Fattah back into the discussion again. Abdel Fattah, who are the voices behind Egypt's youth movement, and why haven't we seen a natural leader emerge from this revolution?
Well, this revolution has, actually, I think at your channel's count, has managed to mobilize 10 million people in a single day. I don't think you can have a natural leader for 10 million people. It's too broad. And because the Mubarak regime had stifled political life, and people's grievances were all, relating to dignity, police brutality, severe corruption and things like that, there isn't a political platform, and there was no need for a leader to emerge, or even a broad set of leaders to emerge. It's a very decentralized revolution, which also gave it strength and made it more resilient to government attacks and to government repression. What we are waiting for now, what we are all waiting for now, is not the emergence of leaders, but rather the emergence of a political process that allows people to freely organize and freely mobilize, so that they find their own leaders and they find their own expression, of their political aspirations. But also we have to realize that there is an economic component to this whole revolution. From the very beginning, one of the slogans was عيش حرية عدالة اجتماعية, which means bread, freedom, and social justice. And now you have the industrial actions, and you have the government employees on revolt, temporary workers asking to be for proper contracts and things like that. So I think we're very soon we're going to see not exactly a political platform, but a clear indication that there are demands beyond constitutional reforms, and allowing for free elections and allowing people to organize.
Let's bring in back Mohamed Waked. Mohamed, there are already voices coming out of Egypt that say the revolution has been hijacked. Who are these voices referring to, and why do they think the uprising is being stolen from them, do you think?
There were many, let's say, perceived attempts of hijacking the revolution. One of them, a central one, the most significant one of them, among them was the attempt to keep Mubarak in and to try and figure out arrangements that keep him in for the next 6 months until the end of his term. There were several political entities and parties and influential figures behind it. So this was the first attempt to hijack the revolution. You start by siding with it and then putting up solutions that keep Mubarak in. Another one, or many other attempts happened in which people started to talk on behalf of the revolution as if they were the ones who represent the revolution, when in fact, as my other colleagues have noted, this is the revolution didn't produce, and in a way it doesn't have to produce the leadership, the classical leadership that everybody was expecting. So there were several attempts already that manifested itself in the form of people talking on behalf of the revolution and in its name, and negotiating with the regime on behalf of everybody in Tahrir, when in fact they weren't in Tahrir. Most of the negotiations, the political parties, official political parties, for example, did negotiate with the regime when in fact they were not around. We haven't seen them in Tahrir or elsewhere. So this of course created a lot of fear about many political organizations trying to hijack the revolution, and in a way it did stifle the creation of a platform because people were against any representation of the revolution until Mubarak leaves. So the fear of hijacking the revolution in a way stifled the creation of this platform of representation of a platform that would represent the people in Tahrir, I would say.
Okay, let's try and explore, if we can now, some of the ways forward after the protests. Let's bring in back Gigi Ibrahim here. Gigi, so who will be taking the message from the youth movement to the military chiefs during the transition? I mean, does the movement, as disparate as it is, do they trust the army at all?
Does it what? Excuse me?
Does the youth movement trust the army at all during the transition period?
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but I think actions speak louder than words. The army has said that they will guarantee this transitional period and guarantee that we will get our demands. However, I think everybody is watching the army closely to see how they oversee this process and that demands actually get met the same way the people have asked for. So until now, the government is still in place, and those who should be held accountable are still not held accountable. So I think everybody is going to be judging the army's position based on how they proceed in this transitional period and how they take actions along, siding along the side of the people's demand. And then at the end, we want the free and fair elections and a civil government, and for the people to choose who rule them, aside from the military's position.
Let's put that question then to Ala Abdel Fattah, also in Cairo, because there are voices in the youth movement that say they don't trust the army. They say the only people they can trust are the people of Egypt. So what should the army be doing to instill confidence within the overall youth movement?
Well, the army has to prove that they have no intentions of hijacking power, and they have no intentions of keeping any remnants of the old regime in. So one of the very first things they should do is hand over, well, not necessarily hand over power, but at least establish a civilian cabinet that is independent instead of just letting the current cabinet continue. Of course, it would be better if the movement, or at least the organized part of the movement, comes up with proposals for this cabinet so that the army would then, accept that proposal instead of the army inventing its own government. But generally speaking, what we need from the army is to feel confidence is that they really show in concrete steps their willingness to hand over power to a civilian government, transition government that would see us through the process of moving towards democracy. One other thing is for the military police to stop beating and arresting people. It has been beating and arresting protesters, activists, preventing food from entering into the sit-in. Before Mubarak was overthrown, we can forget about that because these were probably direct orders from the regime itself. But they continue to do that now, or there are signs that they continue to do that now. I can't confirm the details. And if that is true, then that is a very worrying sign.
Mohamed Waked, there is real confusion, isn't there, as to who the protesters should be talking to in the army? I mean, is it the Vice President, Omar Suleiman? Is he even the Vice President? Or what about General Tantawi? He's the man who leads the army. Who should the protesters be talking to? Who's actually in charge?
They should be talking to representatives of the higher council, the higher military council that is now ruling the country. Definitely not Omar Suleiman. Omar Suleiman is over. With the departure of Mubarak, Omar Suleiman doesn't have any power. General Tantawi heads the council, of course, but delegated representatives of the council could negotiate with delegates of the official delegates of the council that are delegated to negotiate with the protesters officially and publicly. And I mean, this has to be the army's decision to declare a group of representatives of the council to negotiate with the protesters. At the same time, the protesters already have very clear demands. So the army would be, I mean, generally speaking, the army has been playing its role well but slow. So, I mean, they gave Mubarak a lot more time than they should have, and this created a lot of trouble for the country. So I would think if I were to advise in this, were to negotiate with the army on this issue, I would advise a higher pace, I mean, to speed up the changes, and the changes should go in line with the demands. So today, for example, they dissolved the parliament, which was one of the central demands of the rigged parliament, which was one of the central demands of the movement. That should have happened the moment they took over. So I think that basically they should go by demands. There are things that need not be negotiated because they are clear, and they should delegate or at least declare their representatives who are going to negotiate with the protesters.
Gigi, how worried are you about the civilian cabinet that's working with the army during this transition period? Because these people were appointed by Hosni Mubarak anyway.
I mean, the cabinet that's in place right now, it's completely illegitimate. I mean, it's part of the old guard, it's part of the corrupted regime, and there has to be a new civil cabinet to help in the transition, and that should be open to all factions of society that took part in this revolution, that are calling for the people's demand, and it's part of this process towards democracy.
Let's just get a final thought now, if we can, from Ala Abdel Fattah. I mean, do you think the youth movement can organize itself, can galvanize itself, that it presents a viable political message and has real representation across the youth of the country?
The youth movement has already organized itself and has already mobilized itself and has already galvanized the whole country into this revolution. Analysts have a fetish on representation. This is not the stage in which we worry about representation, and the youth seem to be aware of that. We have demands that we are going to get through public pressure, through popular power, not through representation and not through negotiation. And so I don't think it's a valid question. We are already organized and we are already galvanized.
Gigi Ibrahim, how does the youth movement need to position itself, perhaps, so that its message is not drowned out in this future transition period?
I mean, after this process really, and during it, the youth movements have been organizing and have been mobilizing, but I believe that doesn't include all the youth. There is a lot of youth that took part in this revolution that weren't part of any youth movement per se, and we have to reach out you know, to those people and to start self-organizing into official representation, but like Ala said, not to negotiate, but to be the platform where we can voice our demands and have democracy and engage in political sphere, and that would definitely help this vacuum of politics in Egypt that really has been absent for 30 years. So we're starting, we're starting now, and it's gonna take time and process, but people are already organizing, they're already mobilizing, and we will continue until we feel that we have, you know, direct democracy from the bottom up.
Let's get a final thought, if we can, from Mohamed Waked. Mohamed Waked, how much concern is there that Egypt could perhaps be swapping one dictatorship for another if the army doesn't bring about real change and bring it about really quickly?
I think I mean, this is a possibility, of course, but I think the chances for that happening are very slim, because the mobilization that happened did affect Egypt through a widespread effect. I mean, throughout every single segment of society. It will be very difficult for whoever is going to try and not just hijack, but sort of reinvent or reintroduce dictatorship. It will be a very difficult task for them. I don't think it will be easy for people, for them to convince people, and it's definitely not easy anymore to use, to scare people and force them into accepting the same dictatorship again.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Thank you to all my guests, Mohamed Waked, Gigi Ibrahim and Ala Abdel Fattah. Thank you all very much indeed. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We, of course, welcome your comments and your suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. From the whole team here, goodbye for now.